Eamon Khan here for Seconds Out. Pleasure to be in the company of, albeit via Zoom, magic of the internet these days, author, journalist, podcaster, kicker of Hornets Nests as well, to Tris Dixon of Boxing Scene. Tris, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, Ames. How are you getting on out there in Vegas?
Yeah, all good. Pacquiao, of course, at the ripe old age of 46, just come a little bit short. It didn't lose, but didn't get the victory, which is what he was looking for the WBC world title. I want to focus away from that though for the moment and talk about Daniel Dubois, who was in against Oleksandr Usyk for the second time round. But Oleksandr Usyk showed his greatness in the fight, beating Daniel Dubois the second time round earlier than he did the first time. What unfolded for your eyes at Wembley last night?
I think Dubois made a relatively good start in the first round. Certainly the first minute, he started to find a bit of a home for the right hand. But Usyk just sort of started to just figure him out almost second by second, to the point where it just became, the scales just started to tilt increasingly in his favor as the fight wore on. And I think, around the second and third round, he started catching Dubois with some counters, which I think might have given Dubois some PTSD from what happened in Poland a couple of years ago. And I think, soon Dubois' ambition was punctured and his self-belief was punctured by Usyk's sharp counters. And I think, people might have been hoping that Usyk had been would show signs of regression in terms of Dubois' team, and the fact that 2 years had gone and he was now 38 and he'd had a couple of hard fights with Fury, and Dubois was riding the crest of a wave, having beaten Jarrell Miller, Hergovich, and Joshua. But if anything, and I spoke to Usyk about this week, I said to him, everyone's saying Dubois improved. And he's like, I've not been standing still. And Usyk was the one who looked improved, which is staggering. And yeah, it was one of those. He was mesmerizing. I was disappointed with Dubois, who I think when it was clear that Usyk had a measure of him, Dubois had pledged that he was going to bring chaos, and he did not bring chaos. He became more flat-footed, more one-dimensional, and more one-paced as the fight wore on. But it was all to do with Usyk. I think certainly by round four, the penultimate round, Usyk had gone from being on the back foot, looking for counters and working his way out, to being on the front foot and pushing Dubois back. And I think that was a sign of physical and mental dominance.
Is it fair to say that Dubois was better in the first time around against Usyk? And if that's the case, what can we say about Dubois as a fighter as a whole?
I don't think they were too dissimilar, really. I don't think in either he necessarily threw the kitchen sink at him.
Did he learn from that
I don't
first
think
fight?
there's
Did he take those lessons from that first fight into the second one?
I think he's taken them into his career. I'm not sure that you can take them into a lesson. Usyk's, if you're talking about giving out lessons, that makes Usyk the lecturer, and he still doesn't know as much as the guy that taught him the lessons a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. My colleague Radio Raheem spoke to Derek Chisora, who I guess maybe caught up in the whirlwind and the buzz of the fight night experience and watching. And clearly, Derek would have wanted Daniel to win, having shared the trainer in Don Charles in Daniel's corner. But he called it a quit from Daniel Dubois, which is a word that's followed Daniel's career for a while. Is that a fair assessment from what occurred last night too?
Well, I think there's two things. I think Dubois it was weird when the count got to about 8, he sort of nodded like, yeah, I'm going to get up, but it was too late. So you can't predict what's going through someone's mind. But he'd been down seconds earlier and he was in no fit state to continue. So whatever word someone wanted to chuck around, the end of the fight was the end of the fight, and that's where it should have been. Like, there was no future in the fight for him. So could he have made it up to his feet 2 or 3 seconds earlier? Perhaps, but he would have just been dumped on the canvas again. And what's the sense in that? There's people's health and serious matters at stake that go beyond a label. So I wouldn't say that. I mean, you know, the game was over. The game was over. You know, whether you then want to stick a label on someone for the way they go out, I don't know, but it was game over. There's nothing to Usyk had done what he'd done, and like I said, it could have raced against the clock. I don't know. And the thing is, as well, it's such a big arcing left hand that did the damage. You know, we don't know that that Dubois not concussed and just, you know, it was loud in there. There was, you know, 70, 80, 90,000 people, whatever it was. Was he hearing the referee? Could he hear the referee? Did he just mistime it? I don't know. I mean, it would be speculation to stick that kind of label on him after last night.
I'm glad you mentioned that big arcing left punch. That left punch has been given a name in the post-fight press conference. It's called Ivan. This is a fighter in Oleksandr Usyk who's creating these punches, creating these ways to finish Brit opponents. But in terms of what's next in the future, he seems open. He wants to have a rest. But do you see a comparator in the heavyweight division? Tyson Fury is an option. Joe Parker is an option. Moses Atam has been thrown in. Ajit Cabello as well too. Who, if any of those, has the best opportunity of defeating Oleksandr, who's shown no signs of being able to be defeated?
I think Atalma has the best chance 2 years from now, but I don't think he's anywhere near ready. Nor should he be rushed. Like I saw a tweet last night with Turki Al Sheikh saying, "Oh yeah, that's the fight." It's not the fight now. I mean, his best opponent so far has been Dempsey McKean, right? I think what is he, 11-0, 12-0, and even if he beats Dillian White, like there's a lot of people saying that Dillian's no longer the fighter he was. That's not the fight to take him into an Usyk fight. You know, if they're not making a Talma, and obviously they've missed the window now to make him the youngest heavyweight world champion, there's no race. There's no race for this guy. Like we want, you know, boxing needs a figurehead to take the baton from Usyk, or to pick it up when Usyk puts it down and walks off. Talma can be that guy in 18 months or a couple of years, which with the way he's fighting 3 or 4 times a year is feasibly 6 to 8 fights away. There's no need to rush him. Like he's 20, 21. Like, you know, he doesn't need to be fighting for a world title before he's 25. Like there's absolutely no rush. You're not going to beat that Mike Tyson record now. It's come and gone. So there's no need to shoehorn him into it. I think Parker and Cabello are the most deserving challengers with who they've beaten, Joe Parker in particular. The problem is, where do those fights happen, and how do they happen sort of financially? I think if it could, obviously the easy answer is they happen in Saudi, but they're not as big and attractive as even a third fight with Fury, but we've already seen that twice. So, but obviously throwing their name in the hat last night, Joseph Parker was in the ring saying, "What about me?" Fury took to social media and was running through the streets of Morecambe saying, "I'm getting ready, you know, let's do it a third time. I've beaten you twice already." And then there was Jake Paul in the ring, and you know, you got to factor him in because he's feasibly the guy that sells more tickets and moves more pay-per-views than any of the rest. I mean, you hate to say it, but that's just the culture, and that's the way. That's the state of the sport, and what sells. And you know, obviously from a boxing perspective, you do think that, oh well, you know, put Jake in there with a live wire, and he'll get his lights punched out, and then this whole sort of charade, if you want to call it that, it ends. So I don't know. There are options, but I think Usyk will take a rest. I think he'll take a break. But I don't. But I think the landscape now is where the landscape will be when he makes his decision in a few months' time. I don't really envisage Joe Parker taking a big fight until Usyk's made his decision. Possibly the same for Cabello. So we're sort of in a holding pattern now to wait for Usyk to make his mind up about what he wants. And by the way, he deserves that, right? If he's saying he's got one fight left, and he told a few of us in the media last week he had 2 fights, Dubois and one more, he has every right to pick who he wants to go out against.
How do you feel about Jake Paul being in there in the ring with him, having that face-off with Oleksandr Usyk, knowing that, of course, Joe Parker, Ajit Cabello, and others have worked their way into positions to get their mandatory opportunities for fights and didn't have that same opportunity to face off with Oleksandr Usyk in the ring yesterday?
You know how I feel about it, and that's why you asked me the question.
Yep.
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. It's just weird. I mean, he's just coming off a win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a blown up middleweight. That, how does that get you a fight? And he's ranked at cruiserweight by the WBA, unless they've gone against that now. I know that there was talk about them reviewing their decision, and now you're going to fight a top fighter at heavyweight. But then, what was it last week? He was fighting Tank Davis. So, money man, isn't he? Who doesn't want that smoke? Because everyone believes they can shut his mouth, and they're going to be handsomely paid for the privilege. So, like it or not, he's part of the conversation. And us saying, "Oh, it's not good for boxing," and Cabile and Parker deserve the shots. Like, it's not going to change anything. Like, we can bitch and moan about it all we like, but he was the one in there in the ring last night, and he was the one that people were talking about in the press conference. So I don't know. I mean, I would like to see Joe Parker get the shot based on the wins he's had. I think he's the most deserving. He's obviously the WBO's number one, and if Usyk doesn't fight him, he's going to be stripped of the WBO title, and then Parker fights for the vacant title. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. But like it or not, Jake Paul is part of the conversation.
Just to switch back to Daniel Dubois for the moment, how do you feel? Because we as people in the industry look at Daniel Dubois as a completely different personality to what we have in terms of British boxing personalities. He's not one that can particularly figured out. He stands as someone completely as his own person and personality, as I mentioned. How do you feel he will take that second defeat to Oleksandr Usyk? You're someone who gets into the psyche of people with the boxing life stories. What do you think is the work needed to be done in the background to make sure he doesn't carry this second defeat to Usyk throughout his career?
Well, I think, the people around him, his dad and Don Charles and whoever it is, Frank, will be able to say, look, you've done it before. You've fallen before and climbed back up to the mountain again. You can do it again. So the fact that he's done it and lost, and, particularly after the Joe Joyce fight where he received so much unkind feedback on social media, if you can come back from that, you can come back from losing to one of the pound for pound greats, and one of the great heavyweights of all time. So it's just going to take some time. And also, like, Dubois is that big and that heavy-handed and that strong, and you have to say that good, because it's lazy just to call him big and strong, because you don't get to where he's got and achieve what he's achieved just by being big and strong. But he's not the guy. He's not the sort of guy that can't knock over a few bodies just to build his confidence back up. And again, kind of not too dissimilar to a town where he's 27 years old. Like, he doesn't need to be tested again for another 12, 18, 24 months. Like, you can bring him back at a lower level, take some low hanging fruit and build and rebuild, because he's that age and he's got so much experience now. It's a hell of a run that he's been on. Obviously, the last 12 months, he had those 3 fights in 10 months, and now he's had this and Usyk either side of it. It's a hell of a run. Loads of experience now that he brings to the table, and there is a chance that he learns and improves from it. Like I said at the start, lessons learned. It doesn't matter if you can't apply those lessons against someone as good as Usyk. Who can? No one can. No one's beaten him.
I wanted to leave off with the final word on Oleksandr Usyk in terms of his accolades and achievements in the sport. First of all, does that win over Dubois cement his status as pound for pound number one in your eyes? And in terms of the heavyweights you've witnessed, either be it in front of your own eyes on tape of watching those fighters, where does he figure in amongst the greats of the sport?
Well, I don't think the Dubois win changes anything, because he already had the win, right? He already beaten him once. So him beating him again doesn't really change much in terms of his historical standing. I don't think when the historians go back through it 30 years from now, there'll be that many saying, oh, well, it was a different Dubois this time around. It was a couple of years on and that. So I think what adds to his legacy is the fact that he's still doing it at 38. when most heavyweights have packed up shop or on a serious decline, and as we said at the top, like he's the one that improved about out of the two fighters in there. Dubois was 25 previously and now 27. Everyone was like, oh, the lessons have been learned, but Usyk figured him out way quicker the second time. So it's Usyk that's still improving at 38. So that's staggering. And when you look at his career, what is he now? 24-0, 15 knockouts, Olympic champion. He's basically cleaned out the division. When we talk about Caballero and Parker, you talk about deserving champion or deserving contenders, but there's not a clamor. It's not like, oh yeah, this is the guy he needs to fight. This is the guy that stands out as the leading contender. Like he's knocked knocked off all the top lads, with Dubois, Fury and Joshua, and he's beaten them all twice. So you can, and obviously, Joshua's beaten Parker. And I know this isn't how it works, but then, I don't think Caballero's as good as, say, Fury. So there's no leading obvious contender, and for me, it's kind of a good time for him to call it a day. It's not like he's ducking anyone. It's not like there's a clear thing where there's a real like outpouring of public sentiment saying, oh, he's good, this is the obvious one next. Like you said, we kick those names around because we don't really know, who is the guy. It's either someone he's beaten before or someone you think, well, you're kind of putting them in there just because it's slightly different to what we've had before.
Yeah. Okay, Tris, I appreciate your time. For people who want to get a little bit more of you, where can they find you on social media or otherwise?
Just at Tris Dixon on X and on Instagram. And I have the Boxing Life Stories podcast and my work's up on boxingscene.com.
Everyone be sure to check that out. I'll leave the links in the description as well too. Thanks again, Tris, for your time, and I'll speak to you hopefully in person next time round. Much appreciated, sir.
Thanks, James. Safe travels back. Take care.